is the Changing Times, Changing World show, Otherworldly, and we come to you every Wednesday night with to encourage you to come to the conference, and also because I love talking to our speakers. So we're back when I was running the conference, I got to bring in all these wonderful teachers and wonderful topics, and I never got to go see any of them because I was running around the conference. So we started doing the show, and that way I'd kind of get a one-on-one workshops for myself. Now, luckily, I've got somebody else. So tonight I'm going to be talking about distance healing. This is not entirely coincidental. Lois Fitzpatrick, who is one of the organizers on the planning committee of Changing Times, Changing Worlds, is going in for open heart surgery Friday. Yes, and so it occurred to me as I was sending off healing, you know, one of the tracks, there are 4 major tracks in Changing Times, Changing Worlds. There is the healing track, there's the manifestation / magic track, there's the history folklore track, and there's the divination track. And we try and balance those out, and try and get a bunch of everything in. And I said, what have we not done recently? And I said, what? Healing. And being able to do healing at a distance is very useful. To lay down some basic background, human beings are beings that have energy and physical bodies. Some people, the modern scientists prefer to think of our physical bodies as generating energy. More metaphysical people tend to think that perhaps the energy bodies are generating the physical bodies in a way that we do not yet understand. But we definitely have energy bodies, and with practice, we can learn to send the energy around. And one of the cool things about it is that we can use that to heal. Apparently, your physical body needs a couple of things to work at optimum, and one of those things is nutrition. Also, don't break it. And the other is energy. When you get to things like Reiki, it's just like, okay, if you have enough energy, the body can fix itself. And so some of the first basic things you can teach people is to, if you picture the energy that is around you, if you allow yourself to think about it, you begin to be able to perceive it, whether you perceive it as light, whether you perceive it as heat, whether you perceive it as a little tingling. If you work at it, most people can begin to feel it. When you can feel it, you can direct it. When you can direct it, you can help your body heal. And that's really not terribly complicated. And it's not hard, and it is something that we can do almost universally. Very few people can't be. One of my favorite memories is meeting a gentleman and his wife at a fair where I was doing portraits, and he could not move one of his arms, which is why he was on disability. And so I said, well, you know, have you ever considered energy healing? It's like, well, yeah, we've heard of it. But so I had the lady put her hand on his shoulder and the other hand touching his wrist. And I said, now imagine energy just flowing from one hand to the other hand down his arm. And then from there, it's going to go up your other hand and go around and around. And She said, I think I can feel it. He said, I think I can feel it too. And he looked down and he said, I moved my hand. He did like this much, you know, not a lot, but he was like, I moved my hands. And it's like, yes, and you did that and you helped. This is something you have inside of you. You can pursue it. Because to me, it was far more important. If I had run it through and he had moved his hand and he was very excited about it, what good would that have done him?
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that it was something he could do empowered him, empowered his wife, and maybe I like to think that they went out and found something like what we're doing. Healings are recorded as far as recorded history, and almost certainly far beyond recorded history. We, shamanic images on cave walls. It's just something that humans do. We don't have to record. We don't have to write down that human beings can see, that human beings talk, that human beings make art, the human beings use herbs. That's in the archaeological record. It's also what people do. You can go to any tribe of people anywhere on the planet, and they all do that. They also see ghosts, guys, so deal with it. So once you've accepted that we are bodies of energy and that energy can heal, I'd say, okay, how do we get the healing energy that we want to get there? Now, one way is to get help. There are other beings, some of whom do not wear bodies, or sometimes they do, but we get to see it or not. And when we ask for their help, that's called prayer. And prayer is effective. People pray in almost every culture. They say, somebody who better at this than I am, help this person, I want to be better, and they get better. And of course, it's kind of addictive when you feel that you can help, you want to, and you keep doing it. There are church groups out there that have prayer circles and do those things. And I read a lot of books on the power of prayer. And one of the stories that I liked most was about a guy who had been on death's door in the hospital, and his prayer service, they got together every night and prayed for him. And then he got better, and he lived another couple years, and then he was in the hospital, and he had a really nasty sepsis. They said, they're not going to get me this time. This time I'm going to die, and they're not. If I die fast, they won't be able to stop me. The reason I shared that particular story is because, to me, one of the most important aspects of healing at a distance, if you've got your friend there, you can ask them, is this okay? Would you like me to try this? If you're healing somebody from a distance, you have to find a distant way to get their permission. Now, one of the things that many people do when they don't have a handy cell phone or something is that they will put a mental request, a prayer request out. That my higher self, talk to your higher self, and do I feel that I have permission? Get permission at a level, or just send the healing out and saying, take this energy and heal with it as in whatever way is best for you. But
you can, of course, use something like a pendulum or a divination system, figure out if your work is in the best interest of the patient, client, whatever you want to call them.
And it's always, not as I will, but as you will, is mm-hmm. the way that the Christians handle it. And highest interest for the best of all involved. Very like there was a movie, Bruce Almighty, where they gave the poor schmuck the power of God without giving them omnipotence to handle it. And then God came and said, you see, I would have handled that better. The way you handled it, you gave them what they wanted and you didn't give them what they needed. It's like, well, great, God. You can laugh at this poor schmuck who did his best and you didn't give him the tools he needed to do what he was supposed to do. Ha ha. But, you know, I'll watch anything with Morgan Freeman. So,
Chipicon, I have a question for you.
sure.
Just to interject a topic I would like to see covered tonight.
Yes.
Now, you know, I was a home health aide and for 2.5 years, and my specialty trainings were in mental health and hospice. Now, I think the hospice work I did was the most profound work I ever did, because I had the opportunity to help two people pass quietly and easily and with great comfort to their families. Now, I would like you to hold that thought while you talk about distance healing, because, well, it sounds like a time bomb to me, but it is something that, as I look more into what my power might actually be, I have to consider that, because I've always considered, especially in the last few years, that my higher purpose is ministry to the sick and dying.
Okay.
I think that I'd hoped, and maybe that's what made you interject that I was covering that sometimes we don't know what we're doing, and it would.
I think she's frozen up.
It does
Hello?
every now and then.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Hopefully she will return.
Muted.
Am I still muted?
Not at this point.
I'm still muted, but Chipicon's back and she's muted.
Very important for them to tell
There
me
we
that
go.
internet connection is not stable.
Yeah, it was a little wonky there for a while.
Yours
But
is
yeah,
still better than Raven's.
Yeah. Well, you know, just it is what it is. So basically, we have had 2 or 3 shows about death. If you're listening to this on YouTube, go check them out, because there's a lot of good stuff in there. Just forcing somebody to live is not, in my opinion, usually the highest good. To me, death is a blessing. Blessing I'm perfectly willing to put off for, you know, for a decade or 2, depending on the circumstances. But a good death is far more important than a distant one.
well, I am reminded of something that is talked about in the medical profession. The slogan, "Thou shalt not kill, but must not strive excessively to keep alive."
I had never heard that. I like that.
Oh, it's very deep, because there are an awful lot of care providers who see death as an enemy to be defeated at any cost. And it's simply not true. And I thought that my work as a hospice health aide cut through some of that crap. And they taught us so much about how do you reassure the family, this is normal, this is natural, this is how it works. And I run into that. It's, you know, there's so many attitudes I run into in medicine that are really not well thought out. But the idea that there are sometimes you have to say, it is time to let go. And I know that from what I've heard from other health aides and from other medical professionals at every level, not everybody can do hospice. And I feel profoundly grateful that there is something in me that allows me to accept death as part of life and the compassion to work with families. I mean, the last hospice patient I had was 90-something years old. He had beaten cancer 3 times, and he was losing the war on the 4th. And I came in for my shift, and his wife was sitting by the bed holding his hand, and he seemed to be completely out. But when I sat down next to the bed, he looked up at me and reached out his hand. And I took his hand, and that's what I did for 2 hours. And he passed that night. So, this kind of leaves a mark on you. But I felt like I did something really good that night.
I think that death doulas are a coming thing, and especially in a culture like ours where we are taught that death is the enemy, is something that the family needs a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so
I was there. I was much there more for the family than for the dying person.
yes, but it is nice to be dying and to have somebody there who's not freaking.
Oh, and that was the whole thing. I was just so calm and professional about the whole thing. And even when things got ugly, it was like, okay, it happened. We'll deal with it. And it helped the family a lot. The wife and the older son who came up to visit seemed to be terribly impressed. So yeah, it's very much, it's just like funerals are for the survivors, not for the dead.
Well, they are nowadays. In the old days, part of what a funeral was there for was to make sure that the dead did not come back. and to give the living a chance to apologize for all the things they never did when the person was alive. Yeah.
But
we have so having established that, yes, you can ask for outer help. You can also use your own energy. And it comes down to techniques. There are techniques for doing this that we want to learn. I mean, that's part of what the CTCW is about, is okay, I want the how-to. I don't want to know how it works. I want to know how to do it and do it better. And so base level, there's a lot. I remember starting reading in the 70s with therapeutic touch and silver mind control and quantum touch. And okay, long and short of it, and Reiki, but the long and the short of it is, yes, we have the ability to pass energy into other people and help them. And I am not going to tell anybody, you keep trying until you find a form that works for you, and then go with it. If you find the one that works, that's the right one for you to be using. Now, one of the things that when we get to distance healing is there are several techniques for that. But in distance healing, we have there's a question of how is the energy. I can see when I put my hands on somebody and push it in, and I can feel it coming out of my hands. And people can do that. If you put your hands together and then you spread your hands a little bit, you can feel the energy that's going between them, and you can even make energy balls and forms with it, but you can send it. Jane's Norse working session is people sitting in a circle holding hands and sending the energy around, and each individual in this circle pulls from above and pulls from below and sends it along in a clockwise way around the circle, which is like a large cyclotron. And this is how she describes it. It's a cyclotron which gathers more and more energy, and then it is pushed, and people will pull the energy up. The one person is kind of the cheerleader that tells everybody what to do. And I will also say one of the things that helps with this is that she puts up an incredibly powerful boards around the edge energy so that it all stays in until directed to its target. And we have done things from attracting, to healing, working on cancer, diabetes, all kinds of things. And in that one, we will do healing magic by the person who is the focus. When we are working on somebody who's there, one person will be in part of the circle and put their hands on the person who's being worked on and send the energy to them. When there is a person far away who is needing it, that person mentally contacts the recipient and sends it to them, and then the group is just putting energy through the person who's aiming it into the person who is sending it to them. How do we know? What does it have? Well, most systems of energy work, from Huna to Norse to what is Starwolf, you may know the one that comes up with Odic force.
Orgone.
There's just lots of systems. Yes, that's they will. There's a generally accepted premise that there's a channel that goes between people. Our energy is sticky. This is how we can do psychometry. Everything that you touch leaves a little bit of you on it, the way that you leave bits of your scent behind it that bloodhounds can follow. You leave anything you touch has a little bit of your energy in it. If you touch it repeatedly, if you carry it all the time, it's going to have a strong bond between you. Same with people that you interact with a little bit, you got a little bit of a strand between you. If you love them deeply, if you interact with them a lot, you've got a freaking channel tunnel between you and them, which is why when relationships go sour, one of the things shamans have the capacity and the job to do is to cut those, because it's very hard to break those strands, those Ika threads, the web of weird, whatever your group calls it. The more energy that goes through these channels between people, the bigger it gets. It's like, I don't know if any of you have skied. If you're going on a toe and your skis will fall into the little two channels beside the toe. It's not the overhead ones, of course. And it's very hard to get out of those. But if you do, you're going to fall on your face. So when there's a channel, it's very hard to the energy wants to flow through it, and it will keep flowing through it. Every time you think about the person who has misused you, you will end up widening that channel again, which is why cutting it is such a great idea if you've got a bad relationship, because it's just going to keep getting into a bigger, stronger, more powerful, can carry more voltage connection. So we all have, yes.
Yeah, if you have an attachment, that's basically attachment and working out a detachment. But also, if you can, without the emotional attachment, if you can emotionally and energetically replicate the energy of the other person, and with that, it creates a 3D type of template, and it's not a direct attachment, and that's how I use it to connect across distance. I don't need an attachment. I just need an energetic memory that I can evoke to basically tune the TV in. But
Yeah.
and that makes it interesting. And I have to feel feel the drift of the person as they've changed, because sometimes it's been a while since I've seen them or what have you. And if they're asking for somebody else, I have to make sure, yes, is that person receptive? But then I have to really tune into that person's and have them tune in to the person, the person's a target. If I don't know them, if I can't get a direct contact, I don't do it. I've seen a lot of energy requests and stuff from all over the internet, and they may be legitimate, but it's like I have no connection to them. And half the time I feel like it's some sort of energetic Ponzi scheme. But so I try to
Yeah.
avoid that.
And
An energetic
But,
Ponzi scheme, that is wonderful concept where you keep getting new energy investors to pay the people who invested previously.
oh my God, I can so see that.
Isn't that scary?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I have to
vampires.
believe
That's what you normally call a cult.
Yeah,
you know,
that
you may
too.
be right. You may be right about that because you have, yeah, right. Jen just hit into chat. Something we learned in the 90s working on an online service: do not feed the energy creature. Thank you for your comments. Your input has been noted. So, but the idea that you have this organized crime group of energy vampires who are running a Ponzi scheme, and we have an energy version of Bernie Madoff at the top. Well, know thy enemy.
Right, you
Yeah.
are.
Okay, but I was going to hop off of what Bill said, was Arkenstone said, was the you can make a connection in other ways. There have been, for instance, in England, cunning men and women whose specialty was blood stopping. And when the local healers had done everything they could, direct pressure, bandages, whatever, and they couldn't stop the person from bleeding, somebody would get on their horse, grab a bloody rag that they had been trying to, take it to one of these blood stoppers, sometime, take an hour away, whatever. They would come in, they would tell them, this is the blood of so-and-so, and they're bleeding, please, can you help? They would go into their house, and the person would then go back, probably pay them. I assume they paid them, because cunning men and women usually got paid.
No.
And they would, when they got back, they would find out that the bleeding had stopped at the time that the person had gone into their house. They had some way of stopping bleeding on somebody they'd never met, but they had the connection of blood, which, if you're going to have some of your energy in something, your blood is definitely going to be it.
Yeah, that's got to be fingernail pairings and hair by about 2 orders of magnitude.
Right, because I suddenly had this image of this person going into their house and then kind of opening up a radar screen and looking for bleeding because they're sensitive to that. And they find us somewhere on the radar screen. Oh, I see a lot of blood there. Let's stop that. And I don't know if that's really how it works, but that's the only way I can imagine it working.
If you got the blood, you got a target. You can pick up the energy from it.
Yeah.
And if you and generally you are well known. I mean, they said, within an hour. Now,
Yeah.
let's say someone walks, or even if they have a horse and they got a lot of trails, that's 1 to 3 miles at most. Okay, given rural areas, what have you. That is
Yep.
that is generally more or less a limit of direct psychic capacity. I mean, there's direct capacity within 15 meters, and then there's up to 1,500 meters and a little bit more, depending on your skill and ability. That is the
I
Isaac
think you're
Bonowitz.
kind of limiting yourself.
I think
No,
that's
wait
an artificial.
a minute. I mean, that's from a study from Reich, and also a physics study, an electroweak phenomenon, and what have you. But like I said, if you want to get
And-
past that, you got to be able to energetically create the picture of the person, and then you're escaping space and time.
Right, because at this point we're talking about phenomena that are not necessarily limited by physics, at least in the standard sense. And I've always felt that just as I have certain talents in the material universe, I have certain talents in the non-material universe. And it is the exercise of those talents in the non-material universe that allows you to see things other people cannot see, sense things other people cannot sense. And I know that in certain cases like healing, my range is very limited. But there are probably people who have developed, and especially in a specialty like blood stopping, they have put all of their skill and talent into this concept. So I could easily see it happening over a great distance.
Well, you were mentioning that within an hour, Tiverton?
Well, yeah, there were some that apparently they would travel from one county to another. And I'm not, of course, I've got all your basic American knowledge of British county sizes, which is not much.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, as another example, when I was a kid, there were a couple people, and I of course lost the addresses, who you could send them a postcard or preferably a request in the mail, and you could put in $1 or you could put in $0.25 or something, and ask them to remove your warts, and these wart wishers would take the envelope, and and your warts would go away. Now, being viruses, I've always found that viruses are particularly susceptible to human energy interference. So
More so than bacteria and other things like that?
I'm not entirely certain. I think that maybe what's going on is that some people have an affinity for one kind of thing. It's like, one of the things that drives me crazy is in fiction, an artist is an artist and they can do any medium and any whatever. No, excuse me. We each have our own skills. And I think the same thing works with healing, that each of us is better at doing some kind of healing. So how do we, and so when you're sending somebody a postcard, what are they getting from it? They're getting what you sent them. They get the energy that you put into that letter. And personally, I believe that putting payment in enhances the energy and makes it easier for them to latch on and build on that energy to target you and make your warts or your bronchitis or whatever go away. So, so we have these connections with each other. In my experience, you don't, there is, when you're traveling through the ecostrands, when you're traveling through the web of weird, there is no time, there is no distance. It's going directly from one to the other. You don't need you don't need to, the distance makes very little. There is no distance in the in-between. And of course, one of the things that we would like to have go on with changing times is have come up with some mutually understandable terminology.
Yeah, because it sounds like you're being in the void where you're everywhere at the same time, and distance means nothing, time means nothing. And it's, well, really not describable, but that's about as close as I can come.
This is a place that is not a place and a time that is not a time.
Mhm.
So in my opinion, you can get, you would be able to do this. So, but I'd like to now, I see that we're past half hour. But I want to start with the one that I find the easiest to deal with, which is RúnValdr. RúnValdr taps into and uses symbolism of the Norse runes with some other symbols that Rod Cox came up, and we've got other shows on RúnValdr. The lovely thing about that is that the symbolism for distance healing in RúnValdr is very simple. And I'm going to say one of the things I'd like to have as a takeaway is that this is a human potential. This is something that humans can do, and it doesn't necessarily require, okay, everybody has their own talents, but everybody can do this. Use the technique that works for you. I learned Reiki. Reiki wonderfully has a symbol for allowing you to send healing energy a long way away.
Which in the last year I've used an awful lot.
It's a string of kanji. This is not really easy. You have to memorize it. And in the system that, as I was taught, it was a big secret. And after you had practiced writing it down, speaking as somebody who didn't do kanji, so let us practice the writing the name of Allah in the sand. It's like, did you get that right? Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good memorizing. But the way it's done in RúnValdr is you imagine a circle around yourself, you imagine a circle around your target, and you draw a line between them. It looks like a big dumbbell. You have created that strand between you and your target. I'm going to do a Reiki healing. I'm going to send Reiki to Lois Fitzpatrick, our friend in Changing Times, Changing Worlds. And I will start by turning on the power and then healing and sending it to Lois. Lois is there in the other side of my mental picture, and I'm going to send it to her, and I'm going to direct it to when she needs it, because I don't know. I mean, yes, she may have it scheduled on the hospital scheduling, but when does she need it? Is she going to need it during the surgery? Is she going to need it after the surgery? Whatever. I'm going to send healing. Uruz is the healing vitality rune. I'm going to send that to her. I'm going to send a symbol for restoring back to health. I'm going to send the protection runes, it was algaes, and I'm going to do a little bit more. And I'm going to add Bracana because I find that is a big motherly hug that helps anybody when they're feeling a little bit stressed.
And for me, it's change and transformation, which makes perfect sense using it in healing.
Yeah, and so and then I'm going to send this with the affirmation that says Lois is going to get the healing she needs when she needs it, and seal it.
And
And that was it. See, that's why I particularly like RúnValdr, because you're tapping in, you're using symbols that don't require a whole lot of
Memorization.
everything in RúnValdr, all the symbols are circles or parts of circles with straight lines. It's easy to picture. It works gangbusters. And so that's something that makes it really easy. So I do use Reiki a lot, but I tend to, when I'm doing distance healing, use RúnValdr because it's easier for me than the Japanese, because I picture it. And now, if Rod Cox had used Norse language, and when he was designing RúnValdr, then maybe it wouldn't be quite so easy for me. But he did it in English because he's working in English. But other things that we do use, he got his ideas for what he started building on for RúnValdr from Reiki. Sean, can I ask you to talk a little bit about the Reiki, because I think you use it more than I do.
Okay.
So
basically, you've got all the basics down, and indeed, I'm sitting here. The reason you can't see my right hand is it's right over the chest of a teddy bear. Once you told me Lois was going in for surgery, I basically got a volunteer from the bears sitting around me. And I'm beaming Reiki into that bear and through the bear into Lois. So I can just sit here and do this probably for the next couple hours if I have to, or at least until my legs go to sleep. But let me give you an example of something that happened shortly after Kathy and I got our second level Reiki attunements. We were at a concert up in Hartford. It was a rock concert. It was at what was back then the Hartford Stage. I don't know what corporation it's named after now. Being, on the blanket, waiting for the thing to start. And she was practicing, and one of the things our teachers suggested, if you're going to do distance work on a person, take like a doll or a teddy bear and use that as sort of the best way to describe
surrogate?
it is the surrogate to work on. And she was sitting there, and a friend of ours had been in a rather major truck accident a few days earlier and was in a coma down in Texas. What specifically happened is he was asleep in the back of the truck when his drive partner had a heart failure behind the wheel, took the truck up one of those breakdown ramps, and he got thrown through the windshield, out in front of the truck, into a pile of cactus. And then when the truck hit the ground, part of the cargo landed on him, which was containers of loose sneakers. To say the least, he was in bad shape. And what Kathy found as she was doing it, she got some really weird feelings in around the area of his neck. Now, after we did this, when we got home, we called his girlfriend, who got in touch with the doctors and managed to convince them to take an x-ray of his neck. And they discovered that there was a bone fragment that they hadn't noticed before pressing on the spinal cord. That if they'd basically done the stuff that they had planned on doing before looking at it, probably would have put him on a respirator for the rest of his life, and all the other nasty bits they do when you're basically paralyzed from the neck down. But that's a good example of distance Reiki right there. I wish Kathy was awake to tell her, because she can tell it far better than I can. Actually, I think it was a Jethro Tull concert we were going to, which is ironic. But yeah, here, let me finish that up. There you go. So how Reiki works, I don't claim to know. It's, once again, a place that is not a place, a time that is not a time, shortcuts through quantum tunneling. It's more physics than I understand. I'm a witch. It's a technique that works from a distance. Hopefully Lois felt that, and I'll have Kathy put Lois's name in her Reiki grid when she wakes up. So I'm sure she
Good. I was
doesn't know
hoping you
that.
would talk about Reiki grids a little.
Okay, Reiki grids, oddly enough, even though I'm the one who always is building things, I don't own one. I haven't created one. It's basically a circle of crystals with a crystal in the center that you charge and send Reiki into periodically. You have to do it every couple of days. But what it does is once you've got it charged up and running, it sends a continuous stream of Reiki energy to the people or the things whose names you have put basically on paper under the grid. Diane Stein's book, not bad.
I thought of it because it was the first one where she broke the code of silence.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Also, I found, because I've been doing it for so long, I no longer necessarily need to do the kanji. I just kind of wiggle my fingers and start chanting the names. In this case, the name of the distance symbol, and I feel the energy going out of my hand, and in this case, into the chest, into
The bear.
his chest.
Yeah.
Yes. His chest, because he just happened to be the easiest to get hold of and sit right next to me. He understands. So yeah, Reiki grids, they're very useful, especially when you are doing a lot of work on people, because it keeps a continuous flow of Reiki energy going to them. So you don't have to necessarily sit there all day beaming into a teddy bear. Not that I wouldn't like to, but there's the little things like dishes need to be done and food needs to be cooked, and eventually I need to go to the bathroom.
One of the things that I remember from when I was just thinking about Bill's experiences helping people. When my brother was dying, I would go down, and he had a morphine pump, but I would put my hands on him, and people who haven't lived with somebody or done it don't know how painful cancer can be, but they hurt a lot, and it kind of enough to distract you from anything else. With the Reiki, I would Reiki, and it would be like, oh, this is great, and he'd fall asleep, and eventually my back would start hurting because I was in a position to pump into him, and then I would straighten up, and he'd reach out, grab my hand, put it back on him.
Yeah, that's one where setting up a Reiki grid would definitely be a good idea. You basically need 7 crystals. Sorry, 8 crystals, because you have 6 in a circle, 1 in the center, and then you have another one that acts kind of like a wand. And you just do the symbols over it and put the energy into it. And like I said, you usually put the people's names under the grid. Kathy's is actually in it's in a ring binder with the crystals attached to a sheet by Velcro. And then she can just tuck the names into pockets in the back, and she periodically opens it and does the symbols over, starting with the power symbol, and then the distance symbol, and then the emotional healing symbol, and then all the others, and puts them in. One thing I have found very useful in using Reiki, oddly enough, is I have a small, I wouldn't call it a crystal cluster. It looks like it's actually part of a piece of an inside of a geode. It looks kind of like a scrub brush. A lot of times I will put Reiki energy or just energy through it if there's something wrong on somebody. It's kind of like scrubbing away the sticky stain on the inside of the pot. This one happens to be made out of amethyst crystals because, something I bought in a nature store ages ago, and I have kind of a little bag of crystals that I use for things. But Yeah, we can get into that when we get back to
There's
flipping on.
there's a Huna technique. There's a Huna technique for taking it. You basically make claws of your fingers and you get the stuff off of people that is hurting them. Of course, another thing for healing, which that Serge King also teaches, which I really liked, was first take the nail out. before you start your healing. If there's a physical problem, fix it first.
Yeah,
You know,
or
got a nail through their hand. Just fix it. So
or make sure the bone is splinted before you start doing energy on it, because last thing you want to do is fuse something in the not quite right position.
oh,
So
no
you know,
kidding.
as somebody who works or used to work a lot on SCA fighters' rotator cuffs, make sure their shoulders in the right position before you start fusing cartilage back together again.
Yeah. But that is in the make sure
It's
the
the
nail
same
is
principle.
it's such an
Yeah.
evocative image.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pop over to Dynamind, which is a technique that Serge developed based off of EFT, which is the emotional freedom technique that Daniel Craig developed.
The tapping, that's
and
Kathy's neck of the woods, not mine.
dynamite stuff. EFT, Daniel Craig was a therapist who was working with people that had really deep emotional issues. And he found out about meridians and acupressure, which will help stimulate the meridians to get things flowing. And he developed this technique, and I'm going to show you the very basics of Daniel Craig's technique. Is you basically you would say that you have, I said, even though I have whatever this problems, even though I am terrified of water, even though I'm afraid of dogs, even though my mother hates me, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And you're doing this while tapping. You tap on the top of your head, you tap over your eyes, you tap at the corner of your eyes, you tap under your eyes, you tap under your nose, you tap under your mouth, you tap at your shoulder, at the collarbone, you tap under your arms, which I don't like because it makes my boobs flop around like big pillows.
Well, remember,
they
you're
have a-
dealing with something come up with by a guy, not necessarily work on all bodies.
Yeah, and then tap on what he calls the karate chop point on your hands. And then there's a little bit more complicated ones, but I like keeping it simple. And what he discovered was that when you do this and you keep repeating this over and over, it is, even though I have this problem, I deeply and completely accept myself. And occasionally I've seen people who are doing this, and it does, and I deeply and completely accept myself. Lovely.
You look like a
Serge,
third base coach calling signals to a pitcher.
It's a wonderful thing. It's very important, in my opinion, that you have somebody who, if you're saying what your problems are, if you're dealing with issues, you should have somebody who can understand and deal with them in an appropriate way. You can get EFT on the internet. Daniel Craig himself is up there, and the exciting thing was he then discovered, gee, what a surprise, that if you take care of your psychological problems, and what he discovered was that you could take care of things like PTSD and phobias and things like that very, very fast. Within an hour, not within 2 years. but then he, to his surprise, discovered that physical problems were taking, if you were no longer tense, then your diabetes went away, your heart problems went away. You started healing, that basically you're making yourself sick by having to deal with these. So that's a wonderful thing. Serge, who had been trained in Huna, which is the shamanism of the Hawaiian Islands, as well as anything else he could get his little hands on, said, this is nice, but it's still too complicated. So he came up with what he calls Dynamind, which is, you can get a book for, and I have to do another link to to YouTube to put up. Once we get this up on the
Excuse me, it's not the
on
company. it's the
YouTube, on
day.
our YouTube, I'll put some of these links up there too. But Dynamind is even faster and easier. He chose this position to put your hands in because he didn't know of any religion in the world that used this for something. And basically you say, even though I have this problem, and you say what your problem is, whether it's even though I have a headache, even though my back is killing me, even though whatever. Even though I have this problem, that can change. I want to go away right now. This gets past some of the problems that people have with affirmations and other things, because you say, I have a headache. You say, I don't have a headache. And your subconscious is, what the, yes, I have a headache. Don't be stupid. You're lying. But when you say, I have a headache, but that can change, your subconscious is cool with that, because you would correctly identified it. You've been honest. And you say that can change because you know you haven't always had a headache. You fully expect not to always have a headache. So you know it can change. And then you state your intent. I want it to go away right now.
I must
And
admit,
then-
I usually don't say I have a headache. I usually say the headache has me.
But then you say, and then you tap. And the simplified version of tapping that Serge used is the front at the top of your breastbone, on the point where the crease in your hand, at that point
Excuse
where
me.
you hold your thumb and your hand together, that is one of the big acupressure points. And you tap that with one or two fingers, and then you tap it on the other side, and then you tap, I think it's the 5th cervical vertebrae. It's the little point in the back of your spine that's sticking out the most at the back of your neck. And I usually tap about 7 times, because 7's a mystical number. Then you go back to your original position, and most people in Changing Times, Changing Worlds will get this. You breathe in through the top of your head, and you breathe out through your feet, which basically means while you're breathing in, you're picturing energy flowing in through the top of your head, and you picture it going out through your feet as you breathe out. So Lois has a problem with her heart, but that can change. I want Lois's heart to heal completely and perfectly right away. And then you go tap, 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 and it doesn't matter what order you go in.
Interesting. She's
Breathe
going in for
top
heart
of your head.
surgery. Tomorrow night is the full moon. It's the last super moon of the year.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it should be really cool. And it's
Yeah.
also the 25th is this is old Midsummer's. So, but that's it. And you cycle through that. Now with Dynamind, one of the things that happens is you may have a headache. That can change. Want it to go away right now. You may have whatever, but suddenly you can see your headache's gone, And one of the things that you're supposed to do is when you're starting it, you say, how intense is my pain? How intense is my discomfort? And on a scale of 1 to 10, and then if it's an 8, if it's like it's off the freaking scale, then once you have gone through one cycle of this, then you say, okay, what is it now? And it may be down to a 7, and it may be down to a 3, and it may be down. You take it down to where you're cool. You might get it down to a 0. You might get it down to a 2 and say that's fine. Or you might suddenly say, now my stomach feels like I'm going to throw up, and so
That was Friday.
You chase the pain. You say, okay, I may have a stomach ache, but that can change. I want the stomach to go away. It's like, now my shoulder hurts, but that can change. And I feel really hot and angry. I feel hot and angry, but that can change. And then you can follow this and say, and your mind, you will peel it like layers of an onion and find out the reason that my shoulder hurts is because I'm really mad with my boss, who is such a jerk that he really needs to be slapped. And I'm holding tension in my shoulder from not slapping this person who desperately needs it. And once you have said you've gotten your way through the various layers, you'll get down to a point where you have a level of comfort that you can live with. I have used this on a lot of things, and I was going to say, so how do you do that distantly? Same as Starwolf explained, just make a target. You say, this is that person. Yeah. If you have a photograph of them, how many practitioners of voodoo can be wrong, right?
Yeah,
you can use whatever uses a focus. Were you about to take off on that one?
Yeah, photographs are excellent focuses. Names can work, like I said, with using a Reiki grid. A lot of times Kathy will just write the person's name and stick it in there, because after all, the name is the thing. That's one of the laws of magic, and a few other things. By the way, sorry that people are getting a tour of my nostrils again. I still need to come up with a better way to mount my tablet. But yes, you can do both of those. Once again, it beats the nail pairings and bits of hair, because you never know whose hair is mixed in with that hair you just grabbed. Well, I'm thinking specifically of one of the scenes in Harry Potter where they brewed one of those shape-changing potions, and it turned out there were some bits of cat hair mixed in with the bit that Hermione's potion was mixed with, and she ended up with whiskers and a few other things.
Yes.
But
yeah, quite sadly, we are discovering that even now we have DNA evidence DNA evidence is an improvement, because they have used hair in forensic to convict people. It turned out that sometimes it was carpet fibers, not the person they just convicted and sent to death row based on the hair evidence they had. So
yeah,
yay for the DNA.
Yay for DNA.
But it's useful to so I'm just going to go over again, some of the takeaway. We are all connected.
Mm-hmm.
We have energy. We are the energy connects us to each other. We can follow those channels and send whatever form of healing we have to our targets. Another thing that we learned with RúnValdr is that you can put, if you mentally put in I call it a time drip. It's like when you're setting up your coffee pot to start at 7 a.m, so it's there when you get there. You can also say, we want a new dose of the healing energy every 15 minutes for the next 3 hours, or we want at dawn, at midday, at sunset, get another dose of the healing energy. You can do that. Anytime the pain level goes above a 3, they're going to get another dose of healing energy. Give it an instruction. A verbal instruction helps.
Yes.
Did you have something?
No, I was just thinking of something else, and I wish I'd known about Lois's condition a lot sooner. We could have gotten this stuff going a lot sooner too.
Yeah, there's nothing quite so fun as to have the person show up for their surgery and have the diagnostics and say, whatever it was, it went away. We must have been a misdiagnosis.
We did that to somebody once. Actually, we had a friend who had a torn rotator cuff and a bunch of bone spurs. We worked on him for it must have been like 30 minutes, a couple of Mondays before the scheduled surgery. Yes, we were doing it after the Canton meetings here. And when they went and did the preliminary x-rays, they discovered that the bone, all but one of the bone spurs was gone and the tear in the rotator cuff was gone. So yeah, It must have been a misdiagnosis. Saw the before x-rays and no, we did a pretty good job of tack welding him back together again. Which is, once again, it's concrete evidence of how things work. So, like I said, if we could have found out sooner, maybe we could have prevented that, the necessity. What I was getting was kind of this feeling of there's fat on the valves in her heart. I don't know why, but it was like I was getting the look of suet. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I can concur on that. I have helped a couple people with injuries doing similar. The strange thing is that I wonder if it helps if you have a clear idea of what is going on to be able to enact the healing accurately. 5 years ago when what?
I was going to say, definitely.
Yeah, because when I was stricken with spinal meningitis 6 years ago, and then I developed 2 brain bleeds, I didn't know what was going on. It was affecting everything. I just thought I had migraines, and I was willing my sinuses to be healed, willing my head to be healed. And I didn't realize what was going on. I couldn't focus the energy in the right places because I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, also, sometimes it's easier to work on somebody from the outside than the inside.
Yeah. True.
Just from experience, a lot of times we have to, Kathy and I have to remind each other to do Reiki on an aching muscle or a strain or a spot that hurts. It's like, have you done Reiki on it?
Right. Talking about distance energy work, back 20 years ago when I was first dabbling with it, well, actually 25 years ago, when I was first stepping into Wicca, I was trying to learn about astral travel and stuff like that. And then we were, this is kind of aging me a little bit, but we were in the, was it CQ? It's the early chat rooms of IRC and ICQ.
Yeah.
And we were part of a little chatting group there, and one of the members got hit by a drunk driver and wound up in the hospital. And we were all trying to send her energy. And I just recall that within my meditation, I was actually right by them in the bed. And the person actually texted later on and said, I saw somebody next to me, but I couldn't make out who they were. Well, this person had never seen me before. Only checked it in the chat boxes of the IRC, and she validated what I looked like and so forth. And I told her it was me. And she said, well, I could tell you were sending me energy and all that. It was great. Well, she ended up not making it, but she did validate that we were pulling through to help her. But she had a bad reaction to one of the medications that they gave her, and it was fatal.
Yeah.
She had I think it was iodine or something. There was something that they used on her that she was highly allergic to, and it did her in because she was already weak.
Never heard of anybody allergic to iodine.
Oh, I have.
I'm not.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's used in a lot of dyes for testings, like for MRIs and CAT
Yeah,
scans.
I know it. There are iodine compounds that are used as contrast media,
Yeah, that.
and there have been some really bad reactions to that.
Okay, not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
I'm willing to admit it.
Yeah,
Allopathic medicine and I, outside of first aid, that's not a whole lot that I understand.
Anybody that has a really bad fish or shellfish allergy actually has to be careful with iodine.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I assumed it was just an allergy to the proteins in the shellfish, but that's
Not always.
Different. You can be allergic to the proteins, or you can actually be allergic to certain components within just that set of animals or that set of plants might have. I've learned the hard way. I'm sorry, I'm Roxanne.
okay.
I know Thor.
Yeah.
Another thing I did want to cover before we end this up is, because this is gonna get really weird for many people. You can heal the past. It's hard.
Yes.
Because when we incarnate, we agree to the rules of how the planet works, and we agree to living within linear time.
And mucking with causality tends to piss things off.
But you can heal the past, whether or not you should. Again, we're going to get a lot of, but there's some things I find it most useful because when your energy is scrambled by pain, it's very hard to work on yourself. So using the format as shown in the great movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, remember the keys, remember the wastebasket. And if you haven't seen Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, why not?
See it. Yeah,
but
see it.
It's a good movie.
I have said, I can't heal myself. I am hurting. I am tired. I am non-functional right now. I'm going to send myself healing. And I looked around to see who was walking past, what was my immediate environment. And it said, I will, remember to send myself healing to here and now. I took one step, and the pain went away, the fatigue went away, and it was like, and so later, when I got back to the house, I said, okay, it's time for me to, and I sent the healing to what me targeted in that time and place. According to Richard Bach's books, your soul can actually heal really relationship issues, things that you could heal a painful childhood. It's gonna be hard. I am not at that level yet, but
Neither am I.
one of the, the thing is that as with almost anything else, how do you get there? Practice. These are techniques. You have to use them. You have to freaking remember to do it. As Sean said, you know, have you tried Reiki yet? Or in our family, have you tried tapping? Which is just about enough to get the kids to want to. When you're hurting, the last thing you need is somebody telling you that something that can easily be misinterpreted as, are you a dumbass? And that's, no,
But use it before you.
The usual start in our house is, have you taken aspirin?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you had a glass of water? Or we'll come in with a house full of with energetic empathic people. It's like, okay, you walk in the room, whoa, okay, whose headache is this? Okay. Like, okay, it's your, okay, fine.
No.
You're the one who has the physical problem. You're the one who's dehydrated. You're the one that's stressed. Okay, we'll take care of that person, and then the rest of us can not, you know, we can shield or whatever, but basically it's whose headache is this?
But there's definitely an element of use it or lose it, because I feel that in my own Reiki, which is pretty feeble this day because I haven't been practicing.
And my answer is you have
to practice.
If you need something to practice on, you have cats. They love Reiki. They claim to have invented it.
I can believe that because our older cat Toaster, who is now 18 and showing signs of old age and pain and all of that, if I dare lie down to rest or take a nap, she is right up on the bed and snuggles up as close as she can get. And I will do the charging of the hand chakras and then lay my hands on her, and she'll go right to sleep.
Yeah, and Bill could also practice Reiki on me.
Well, yeah, and we ought to probably do that in a more organized way, because I am only now thinking of it again as part of my daily abilities and routine, where it just it was just in a box in the garage for a long time.
I've also been doing my form of energy healing on Cat Toaster as well, because she's had pain in her hips lately that she'll hiss at you when you get near touching them. So I call up the energy from wherever it comes from, and you can feel it going in.
You know, I think all energy healing at its base is really the same, because there is a universal energy. And in the words of an old Indian shaman, I am become as a hollow bone. You're just a channel. It's not your energy. You know, you aren't the one doing this. So you try to get out of the way. And that's where the Zen has been very good, because it's easier for me to get out of the way now and then just lie there and feel the energy flowing without being distracted by it. I'm not attached to my Reiki anymore. I'm not attached to any power it might represent. You know, I'm just there. I'm just a fire hose for the energy.
Yep. Excellent analogy.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that's helped a lot.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about anything that they want to get? Does anybody have any healings that they would like? Anybody
I have
who
no more.
has?
I think we covered my questions pretty thoroughly.
Yeah. Pretty much anything that I had a question about, we've covered.
Great. Okay. Then I think we have gone a little bit long, but I didn't want to end before we had. I'm going to go back to what
What's his name?
Bill said in the at the beginning about, you know, death and working with that. We have to accept the world as it is, and death isn't our enemy. It can actually be one of the greatest healers in a way that we may or not be willing to accept.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
I have one thing to
I'm
add.
personally very grateful that I don't have to look forward to a life in which I am in constant pain, unable to take care of myself. Like, yes, when it gets bad, I get to die. Yay!
Whereas I have
and
every intention of becoming immortal.
Well, I plan to live. Well, I plan to live forever, and so far it's working.
Oh, yeah, same here.
So far.
not me.
I have
not me.
one thing to add is that even how good you may become, I've known some people who are willing to accept healing, but the disease or whatever, they may at some spiritual level be holding on to it for dear life. There's not
Oh
a
yeah,
damn thing you can do about it.
people
You just
who
have to
cling to
accept it.
people who cling to their miseries. That was a topic I think during a previous cast, and I have personally experienced having energy rejected, and I know of stories of shamanic healers who tried to cure somebody, but the mother of the child who was ill was so attached to the control that she had because of it that the energy just flew back in his face.
I've
And
also, when you're done, one of Kathy's students is kind of like that. I will heal you, and unfortunately, it tends to kick back at him. It used to be you could always tell he was going to have his next lesson or his next attunement because something bad would happen to him. Like one time he bit off the tip of his tongue, but he had this tendency to do drive-by healings.
Oh,
drive-by healing. I'm going to remember that phrase.
Yeah. This was at the height of the whole gangbanger thing. So where you had drive-by shootings. No, this gentleman would do drive-by healings, and it tended to go badly for him.
No, dear.
It's one of those. It's like one of those evangelical healing ministers who says, "I will heal you, whether you want to or not."
Right, and I wonder how many times this had to happen. Has he learned the lesson yet, or does he still do it?
He finally did learn his lesson. It helped that he got married and he basically acquired common sense the way so many of us guys do. We marry.
Well, it's like Woodrow Wilson says, I use not only all the brains I have, but all the brains I can borrow. So.
Never been particularly fond of that gentleman, but that's another matter.
Well, no, there's a reason not to be fond of him, but he did say that really excellent thing.
I'm still of the opinion we'd have been better off with Roosevelt as president during the First World War.
I might agree with you there, but that's history, not what we're talking about tonight. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I really don't want to try changing that much history because things would probably go very weird.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even, said, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do? I said, do the same damn things I did, stupid mistakes and all, because I have no reason to believe that I'd be any better off. So, that's another.
There's only one thing I would do if I could do it all over again, and several of those things are simply duck faster.
Yeah.
Suddenly I just had an animated TV series pop into my mind with this character Duck Faster.
There's at least one situation where I would probably not have a piece of steel in my skull if I had ducked a little bit faster.
Well, there are probably moments like that and things you could have avoided that had a major negative impact on the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But another attachment is wanting to redo the past. And when you're trying to live in a world where today is today, the moment is all we will ever have.
Yeah.
The past is unreachable. You can't change it. The future is unpredictable. So literally, I try to wake up every day and say, all right, what's going on today? And it probably isn't what I planned or expected.
Never is.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And
Always.
when you can live in peace with that mind state, life gets easier because you don't freak because things aren't going according to plan.
Once I finally wake up, I usually have to tell them what's actually going to happen today.
Well, yeah, there is that. Well, once she gets up, then I find out about the rest of our reality and things that happened overnight that I don't know about, or things that have to happen.
Appointments
And
people at 3 in the morning for that afternoon.
right, so the concept of not being too terribly attached to the concept that you have any clue what's going on, and I just find, and that's sort of like the Zen concept of the not knowing mind. We want to know everything, but to approach the day with ultimate innocence and ignorance can be a blessing.
Okay, well, I'm going to just finish up now. I like ending on be a blessing. It's a good way to end.
Oh yeah.
And remember to practice. Remember to do it. Remember that the only prayer that isn't answered, the only spell that doesn't work is the one you never bothered casting or never bothered making.
And the only dumb question is the one you never asked.
Yep. So we are going to encourage everybody to let your friends know, because people who, everybody is interested in some form of divination, some form of healing, some form of manifestation. And tell people about it. This tonight has been an awful lot like the panel format, and there's the workshop formats, and then there's panel formats. I particularly like the panel format when people are chatting and talking.
Yeah.
And that's what Changing Times, Changing Worlds is. We will be virtual this year because it takes a while to achieve herd immunity. So we're going to safely be on Zoom November 8th through the 14th. And then maybe next year we'll get to go back to the haunted
I would love that.
Dirty Dancing overlook
Meet the Shining. Meet the Shining. Yes.
And so nice to thank everybody for coming, and tell your friends. You can direct them to the YouTube channel where we have a whole lot of our.
I will do that.
There. And
if people could please share this out on your whatever social media you're part of, so other people can find out about this. I'd really love to see Changing Times grow.
Yeah.
I shared it again.
We are.
Yeah, I shared it again in the New England group for the alley.
Right, and Jen's the one
New Hampshire and all, so.
Right, and Jen's the one who's really active on the channels like that, where I am not. But knowing about it, and of course, I'm more likely to run into some person at a checkout line, like I ran into somebody who subscribed to the Alleyman deck.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. They really are.
How many of us are in this group?
Isn't that we're everywhere?
Hi.
Yeah, I'm letting her do the work.
And there's a gifted this weekend at a